I'm known as Soup Campbell. The process of making toys is first coming up with an idea so that I make something that somebody actually wants to have. I didn't want to make an injected molded plastic something that they could buy from a store. I wanted to produce something that they couldn't get anywhere else. And it was made with a product that I could obtain locally without having to import it. So I decided to make something out of wood because we have a certain amount of low quality wood here, soft wood and so forth. So I went to the stores and I found out that I could buy 1x12 planks of softwood as my raw material. And from there I started making drawings of airplanes, and I found that in Spanish and in English the word when you're flying an airplane is zoom and it's the same word. So it was easy to teach them how to have an airplane that they could run around with and play airplane flyer. The goal was to give as many children as we could a toy for free, something that they could spark their imagination with. They could play with it, and it was better than pushing a rock around a mud puddle. Before COVID, we started by handing out toys to anybody who was on the street. And then we started going to the schools. And the Central School in Volcán has about 600 students, and the school in New California has about 1,000 students, and the school up in Paso Ancho has about 1,000 students. So we started making 3,000, 4,000 toys a year so that we could go to the school and hand every kid a toy, make them all happy at once. And it wasn't creating a caste system where one kid had this and the other one couldn't afford that and anything else. We just give everybody a toy. When I say there's 1,000 students at the New California school, that's in all the grades, kindergarten through 6th grade. So we sort of filled that need all in 1 year by doing that. And we don't have necessarily a good way to just add toys every year. We have to give them to the whole student body at the same time, because some of them are lost and some of them are broken and everything else and so forth. But it's been a few years because of COVID, and so we probably need to build up a big bucket of made up toys and go to the schools, and we'll try to do all of the schools in the same week. There's a school at Bambito that has about 30 kids in it, and that's fine, but if we go to New California, we have to have lots of bags of toys. And now we have 3 different models of toys. We've got the airplane, the tractor, and the sailboat. We still make toys even to this day and take bags of them up to the hospital where they can give, I guess they're only giving the toys now to rowdy kids to help calm them down when they're anxious and so forth. But I've been a builder all of my life. I build solutions for people's problems. Electronics, systems, assembly lines, programming telephone switches so that it will do what they want. I solve people's problems, so I'm a technician. Not a salesperson, but a technician. If somebody gives me a problem, I try to solve it for them. Sometimes they want to solve their own problem and they just need a piece of information, but I want to solve it for them, and I've got to resist that. My pensionado visa does not allow me to work for money in Panama. And that's fine, because I don't want to work for their low wages after making Alaska wages. And I don't want to compete with somebody who needs to make a living to feed their family. Just that simple. So I couldn't necessarily do what I did for big money in Alaska here in Panama. Although they might be able to use my expertise, it would be putting somebody out of a job. So I started doing other things. I went to people's houses and fixed things and this and that and something else. And then I quickly realized I was putting a Panamanian fix-it guy out of business, and I shouldn't do that. So I decided to leverage my computer knowledge and buy a CNC machine and start carving wood. And I didn't want to compete with Artie Cruz or any other other woodworker here in Panama. I didn't want to start making cabinets or anything else. And what came to mind was I would make toys for children and give it to them for free. I'm not competing with anybody if I'm working for free. Maybe I'm keeping them from starting a new business, but I'm not competing with anybody if I'm not taking money out of their mouth, and that's important to me. In 1969, I left New York for Alaska, and I went to college up there. And 11 years ago, I moved back. I moved to Panama to retire. I worked at Boca Flat Research Range, launching rockets into the Aurora Borealis. I put together some of the early computer systems. I left the university's employment and had my own computer store. And that was before the IBM PC was invented. I'm not much of a salesman, so eventually I went to work for the state of Alaska in the communications department, running their telephone network, microwave, and two-way radios for the Fairbanks area. I worked as an engineer for the Corps of Engineers building a hospital in Fairbanks, and then we moved to Panama, where there's plenty of sunlight and warm temperatures and no fuel oil bill. That made our retirement go a lot farther when we didn't have to pay $9,000 a year for fuel oil to keep the house warm. When we were looking for a place to live, the criteria was that it's got to have 12 hours of daylight all year round. It's got to be between 65 and 75 degrees, and it's got to be affordable. We looked at international living, and we saw that Costa Rica had been promoted very successfully by International Living 10 years before, and they were just starting to change their focus to Panama. So we knew we'd get on the ground floor of a developing nation. I found Jackie Lang's tour of Panama, and my wife wanted to go to Costa Rica to see what Costa Rica was like, and I told her she could, but I was going to go to Panama, and if she wanted to go with me, she was going to have to go to Panama. So we spent 8 days with Jackie's tour, touring Panama, and we found all the places we didn't want to move to. And we came up the hill into Volcán, and my wife looked at the sign and said, "Oh, I'm home." And we were done looking. That was the end of it. We found a place that was the right temperature and the right amount of daylight and the right amount of pioneers still developing, so that we could live out the rest of our lives in Panama. The only thing that we both regret is neither one of us speak Spanish. The U.S. military figured out that people have expectations when they go someplace new. At 5 years of being in that new place, half of them will find out that their expectations were not met and they will go someplace else. Okay, so there's a 5-year window after you move any place new, to either change your expectations or leave, because you're absolutely going to be wrong about what you expect. Okay, so to an American, the normal thing to do is to move into an area and buy a house and find a church and go to school and find out where you're going to buy your groceries and all these things according to an order that you've grown up with your whole life about getting the things that are important. Throw that away. You're going to find that things are different. Not horrible or great, they're just different. And the real estate market, at least here in Volcán, is not liquid. Okay, so anything that would meet your U.S. standards is probably going to be out of the range of a farm worker that's making $4 an hour or $13 a day or something like that. Your only chance of selling your house, if you decide you don't like where you're living, is to wait for another gringo to come along and buy it from you. That's it. The bank is not going to loan them money. It's not going to loan you money. All of the bank's loans for real estate have to be retired. You have to pay off your loan by your certain age. They don't want to go through probate if you die. So, and every bank has its own rule, but if your loan has to be paid off by 60, it has to be paid off by 60. If it has to be paid off by 55, it has to be paid off by 55. So the finances are significantly different here about owning. If you've got a big nest egg and you want to invest in Panama, that's great. I have no discouragement about that at all. If you want an American style home, build it, because you're probably not going to find one that's exactly what you want. So go ahead and build it. But it's going to be part of your estate when you die. Now, if your relatives are inheriting a home that's in Panama, do they want to move here or do they want the cash? And how are they going to convert your inheritance into their cash? It's something to think about. It's a personal choice, and that's just the way it is. The other thing, and it's a problem for everybody to get used to, and it's an easy solution. Once you come to Panama, you get something called a cedula. And the cedula is your Panama ID card. Now, when I lived in the States, my ID card was my driver's license. Most people don't drive down here, so they have a government identification called a cedula. As soon as you immigrate into Panama and become a legal resident of some sort, whether you get your pensionado visa or something else, you can get a cedula. Now you have an ID card of the country. When you have your cedula, it's easy to go to the bank and open a bank account. If you have a local bank account, you can write a personal check on your U.S. bank account and deposit it in your Panama bank and live off of your Panama bank. So the U.S. has a tax rule that if you have more than $10,000 invested outside the U.S., you got to fill out extra paperwork and so forth. So write a check for $10,000 and put it in the Panama bank. When it gets down to $5,000, because you paid your rent, and you bought your gasoline, and you bought your food, gets down to $5,000, write another check for $5,000 and put it in your Panama bank. It's easy. There's no sense in wiring money here, there, or someplace else. Just write a check and deposit it. It takes 21 days for that check to be posted to your account because of the float rules. So what? You know? Once you have somebody to mail your stuff to you, Amazon, for instance, through the Alana Group, once you have your money taken care of, now your chore is to learn how to live in Panama. Okay? And by the way, the other thing that was true when I got here is taxi cab drivers know everything. If you need to go buy a hammer, ask the taxi cab driver where to go to buy a hammer. Taxi cab drivers know everything. They are the yellow pages of the community. It's easy. Okay? You find a taxi cab driver that speaks English that you can understand, and you grab onto him like he's gold. You get his phone number, you call him directly, you develop a personal relationship with him. And he can even help you find a rental apartment. He can help you do anything because he meets with hundreds of people every day and he's part of the gossip community. The biggest problem that causes me to want to change something is when I forget that I've moved back in time. I moved from leading edge, cutting edge, high technology, everything's competitive to give me the newest and greatest and most wonderful thing, and I've moved back in time. That's my problem. Okay? If I want this tool and it's not available on the shelf at my local hardware store, I can order it from Amazon. All it takes is money. If I have enough money, I can solve almost every problem. And if I don't have enough money, that's my problem.
Thanks so much to Soup for taking the time to talk to us. Let us know in the comments which toy is your favorite. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel.